Thank you, Susanna. Share my screen, if you don't mind. I'm very happy to be with you today. It's been extremely moving to listen to all these testimonies and appreciation of Bernard's work. So here I am. Wait a second. So basically, I'm going to try to speak from a practical perspective. I've encountered Bernard's work many years ago when he was working on the question of attention, but it's only recently that it became really an urgent matter, or something that really spoke to me more closely as I started engaging with questions of finance or alter financial issues following the rise of distributed ledger technology or blockchain. So that's how basically his whole way of trying to deal with the production of locality and his tremendous courage in tackling the issue of inventing new institutions became really spoke to me very closely. So my talk is entitled The Cosmo-Financial Pharmakon and the Problem of Locality. And I'm basically going to try very shortly to share with you a couple of coordinates as to how the way Stiegler problematizes the problem of localities in relation with what he calls the neganthropocene. For me, if I want to be faithful to his thinking and try to move further with it, forces us or brings us to problematize something that I like to call the Cosmo-Financial proposal or pharmakon here in resonance with his work. So there's different ways to articulate what this Cosmo-Financial proposal is about, but basically it is a way to problematize the value discovery processes that are parts and parcel of what finance is about, basically. Finance as a way to prospect into the future. So I'm trying to suspend here any judgment about like what we think about finance most generally, and the very welcomed and well-deserved demonization of finance. But basically, I get empowered by Bernard to ask these questions and to open them up because of his very generous way of conceiving. I'm quoting here. He talks about the economy as a general therapeutic for the biosphere in dialogue with Georgescu Roegen. And this is extremely stimulating for me to think of economy as the general therapeutic of the biosphere, because spontaneously we would think, or we would say, that the economy is definitely part of the problem of the acceleration towards entropy that he is diagnosing. But at the same time, there is this idea of opening up the problem of belief in the world that is very present in Stiegler's work, like the problem of nihilism and how to generate reasons to believe in the world. And then what I really like about Stiegler is that he brings the question of belief into the world and turns it into a credit formation issue. So how to build the conditions for a new accreditation, for new credit formation. And that passage between the belief and credit, I think, is extremely stimulating, extremely rich in his work. Even though I disagree with some of his ways of like maybe over-insisting on the symbolic, it still is extremely stimulating because of the way he forces us to think how to generate new institutions, how to instaurate gestures that sometimes need to assume the role of programs. So this passage between gestures and programs, or between belief and credit, is what I'm interested in, and I try to thematize around this idea of the Cosmo-Financial. So this issue, sorry, I can't access exactly. I'm gonna try to, yeah, put it in diapositive. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I mean, you're all very familiar with Stiegler's work, so no need to go too far into the question of trans-individuation, but it's really key, I think, as an entry point to understand his conception of knowledge as transductive. So I'm quoting here Dominic Petman, who is a great fan of Bernard's work. He says, knowledge is a transductive process. It is not a package passed from person to person, but a system which produces the nodes in the network, you and I, through the very process of circulation. So there's this idea that transduction is a structuration process that is interested or that concerns localities. So this issue of the local, I mean, Bernard is just one of the many thinkers, especially in the Francophone world, with the question of how to become terrestrial again, how to empower the locality against general equivalence. So he's really part of a whole generation of thinker here. But again, what I find particularly interesting in his work is how he opens up the question of what he calls the organological, like the question of the organization of these different metastabilizing individuation, as he calls them, and the way they technologically concretize into metastabilized precarious localities. So basically what I want to open up today is this tension between what I called before, like the belief in the world and the credit formation, or between gestures and programs, or in this case, localities that will be able to sustain themselves using technologies of different kind, computation even, but at the same time, they are precarious localities, and they articulate at different scales. And this way of Bernard of foregrounding the issue of the precariousness is something that I tend to take for granted from where I'm coming from philosophically. And Susanna, you were mentioning like my interest in contemporary art. So in arts, of course, the issue, the scale sensitiveness and the foregrounding of the precarious is extremely present. But the moment you start working with people more interested in distributed ledger technology, computation, systems more generally, that precarious trans-individual or transductive aspect of localities very easily gets lost. So it's very interesting to see how in Stiegler's work, he's holding both sides, trying to open up l'avenir and not to be only to foreclose futurity. So there's this moment in his last book, his collective book Bifurqué, where he openly thematized this precariousness as something like the mother. He describes locality as the mother of difference as such, and he describes it as a mystery in an openly initiatic sense. So I'm quoting here from Bifurqué. He says, what we call, I'm translating, what we call here mystery in echo to the mysteries of Eleusis is what, under different names, among which the mystique bifurcation in Bergson and its articulation to the mechanical and as mystical foundation of authority remains incalculable, and for this reason improbable and improgrammable. This is what Rilke or Deleuze differently call the open. So that side of Stiegler's work is extremely congruent with a lot of contemporary continental philosophy, but it's so important to keep in mind when starting to experiment with new computational technologies and with people that are not necessarily used to describe this initiatic dimension of the transductive. So I find myself in that position where, on the one hand, we want to open up the question of finance anew in order to empower ourselves, empower the collectivities that we want to defend and promote. And at the same time, of course, we don't want to fall into what Stiegler has been describing very eloquently when it comes to a general proletarianization of knowledges. So this tension, I think, is extremely powerful and comes to the fore in his latest text, or like something that feels a bit like his philosophical testament. Sorry, I'm moving between. This text is entitled Des mesures, promesses, and compromis, and it reads basically as a Stiegler's program, or latest version of his general program. So it both reads as an invitation to build a new institution together, but it also reads as a great drama of neganthropocenic presence, using the concept here of Ernesto de Martino, a drama of presence, just to foreground also the way that Stiegler puts himself into stake as he writes. He dramatizes, and sometimes I would say over dramatizes the issues of our time, but this way of making himself operational is extremely interesting. And in this specific text, the whole relation between modern subjectivity, the way that the modern subjectivity produces certitude or certainty for itself, and the necessity basically of opening up the uncertainty principle as pharmakon for transforming our modes of subjectivity. This is something that very few people have articulated as bluntly and courageously as Bernard. So that's very interesting, because he does so while hinting at the problem of calculability or computationability, and as he likes to say, in a pharmacological way. But he is allowing, in the way he problematizes the question of computation, he actually creates occasion for intercession between milieus that very often don't meet one another. And in this specific case, speaking from where I am at the moment, the relation with programmers, coders, and people that are genuinely interested in thinking social network technologies from a creative point of view and not only from a critical one. So this would be an image that summarizes the pharmakon of the uncertainty principle and the way that Stiegler dramatizes the uncertainty principle into our age. So I think what I would like to do is, if we can experiment with that, I'm really trying to speak from the perspective of a practice that I'm engaged in, of creating a digital commons around a circus and the performing arts. It's a project, it's a collective project that is just starting, and that Geert Lovink participated in a few weeks ago. So if you would like, I would like to share with you a little film that we made that is basically a little manifesto. It lasts 2 minutes. I will post the link in the chat, and you can all load it on your own computer. We tried to present it, but it didn't really work because of quality of the transmission. So basically, I would like to share this film. It's basically a tribute, a way to honor Bernard's work, but from a practice of new forms of computation. So I just posted the link in the chat. Hopefully it works for you, and we can all click simultaneously and watch it. It's like 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I think. so it's pretty short. Maybe just let me know if it works on your side. Yeah. Can someone confirm that the link is okay? Great. Yep. Okay, so let's take it's 4:29. So let's take 3 minutes and come back at 4:32. Okay. So did it work for most of you? Okay, great. So this is something we just presented a few weeks ago. So basically the hope is that distributed ledger technology through cryptographic consensus could provide a technical solution to the problem of trust and cooperation in large-scale digital collectives. In a world moving towards accrued social fragmentation, the way we create new technosocial modes of coordination has indeed become crucial. As Yves Citon pointed out in his seminal Towards an Ecology of Attention, the real challenge is to terraform new metamorphic passages between the micro scale of collective presence and the macro scale of media aggregation. Economies are assembled from different type of flows, that is, incorporated values made liquid. To register and manifest these flows, we use what we call currencies. What if the solution for weirding our economies anew was to break down the capitalist mono-economy, or monetheism, into a myriad of living cryptocurrencies, coordinating social financial flows and networks in new ways? The key point here is that we need to conceive of money not just as an external economic factor synonym with value extraction, dispossession, and toxic accumulation, but as a configurative power that shapes our attentional milieus. The possibility offered by distributed ledger technology to multiply monetary self-issuance appears as a way to renew our collective incorporations, the way we come together without becoming one, generating derivative value along the way. Blockchain and distributed ledger technologies are most often associated with cryptocurrencies, but it's more interesting to conceive of them first as constitutional or institutional orders, a set of protocols by which individual firms or algorithms can make economic and political exchanges. In this sense, blockchains look a lot like jurisdiction or virtual countries, hence the famous rallying cry of blockchain anarcho-capitalist early day, code is law. So in short, blockchains are governance-making machines. The protocol is the institution, and as such, they allow for the formation of all sorts of digital membranes, economic enclosures, and eventually new types of digital commons. Many anarcho-monadologists and other new materialists argue that commons, digital or not, are not so much about new social constitutions, but rather new lived geographies, grounded and transversely felt. They make clear that engaging with the enabling constraints of derivative finance and cryptoeconomics is risky and definitely problematic. So at best, I would say cryptoeconomics could act as a neganthropic pharmakon, as Stiegler puts it. So a perspective in which the economy itself works as a general therapy for the biosphere, reversing the destructive course of the Anthropocene by favoring the always localized slowing down of entropic processes. And at worst, the proliferation of cryptoeconomics modes of organization might actually signify the destruction, that is, the economic reduction of countless other types of worlding practices, more subtle, more improbable, and less calculable too. Cosmopolitics, usually understood, and I have a bit of a disagreement with the way that Stiegler or Yuquay are using the word cosmo, or the prefix cosmo. I'm speaking here maybe more from a Sengersian or Latourian perspective. Cosmopolitics is concerned with more than human communities and the way they attune with their associated milieus. The Cosmo-Financial proposal extends this view by integrating the promises and challenges raised by cryptoeconomics and derivative finances affordances. So the Cosmo-Financial art of belonging in becoming foregrounds value transductive discovery processes that are not confined to the logic of the market. So that's really important. Like the idea that value discovery processes are not the monopoly of the already existing finance world or the market-based economy that we're living in. But we need to reopen, what does that mean to engage into value discovery processes? For what we owe to one another is not something in particular, it is the very unknown that envelopes our existences, the zones of opacity and indetermination delineated by our more or less felicitous encounters. The cosmo in cosmopolitics, cosmotechniques, or cosmofinance refers to the unknown constituted by these multiple divergent worlds and to the articulations that they are capable of. So the question of how we expose ourselves to the unforeseeable, or what Stiegler calls l'avenir, instead of the pre-programmed future, is central to any discussion regarding collective self-organization. It points to the way we conceive of our common power, our differential sense of shared potentiality, as we search for ways of subtracting ourselves from the self-valorizing imperative governing our lives. Beyond the mere consensus on shared data, what kind of technosocial recursions, collective rituals, proofs of celebration, and other metamorphic procedures of belonging and becoming can we imagine for the infrastate disjunctive collectives and other transnational digital tribes to come? How can we bring about new calibrations between the realm of the quantitative and qualitative aspects of living, allowing for a wider range of values and life-nurturing practices to gain currency? The Cosmo-Financial proposal is set to continuously explore the heterogeneous expression and informalization of our mutual indebtedness in order to foster differential collective incorporations that resists the flattening of social, cultural, and ecological values. Ultimately, the rethinking of financial processes of value measurement as worlding practices gestures towards a shift from the neoliberal subject of interest to the protean figures of the futurial conservationist, the radical communist, and the trans-individual metastable ensemble. So there's many things. I mean, there's a lot of overlaps between what I just presented and what I see in Stiegler's work. But yeah, maybe the most important here, I guess, is the spirit of poetic experimentation. I don't think there's any theoretical solution to the question of how we bridge new modes of valuation and interface with the actual already existing market. So I think there's a lot to explore here, and this invitation from Bernard to engage with computational power, to engage with our power for formalization, I think is really key, even though it is extremely problematic in so many ways. But I think it's worth trying and opening up the question of scalability, like how can we scale our capacities for local organization. So I guess, I mean, there's many other things I would like to talk about, but I guess this is like basically the gist of what I wanted to say today.